Yeah, my question was on the status of the white paper on enterprise, which is fundamental, I think, to the new transformation that we have to take in Ireland. Thanks.
My department continues to progress its work on the white paper on enterprise, which is scheduled for publication in December this year. We've undertaken an extensive consultation with the public, stakeholders, academia and other interested parties over the summer, as well as holding a symposium on the project earlier this month. The white paper will seek to articulate what needs to be done differently to realise our aspirations for our economy in 2030 and beyond. It will set out the risks we face, the policy choices and, importantly, the trade-offs we'll need to consider. It'll also seek to confirm what elements of the ecosystem are working well, what should be continued or adapted in the context of Ireland's enterprise, in the context that Ireland's enterprise industrial policy has to date served us well. Prioritising sustainable Indigenous industry, as the Deputy identifies, will be an important theme in the white paper. It'll also cover entrepreneurship, innovation, scaling, the twin transitions of digital and green, investment in skills and education and competitiveness, among other issues. The outcome will likely be one of evolution and adaptation rather than revolution. And my ambition for the white paper is that it will contribute to a more prosperous, equitable and sustainable Ireland.
Thank you, Minister. I think this paper will be crucial, setting out the policy for Ireland. And I had hoped to make a submission myself. I read all the documentation, and indeed I got as far as doing a draft submission, but I took the trouble to read it. And what troubles me is that in theory, we're going to change, but it seems to me when I read the documentation that we were going the same direction. And why do I say that? Because the other minister's here and she'll be dealing with this later. But in terms of the policy for the islands and sustainable living and backing them up on what they're doing on the ground with Indigenous industries, we don't have that policy yet. If we look at seaweed, I'm only taking areas that I've taken a particular interest in. Seaweed, and the Minister is nodding his head. We've gone nowhere with that in terms of an Indigenous industry. Absolutely nowhere. And then we take wool, the latest, which I raised yesterday. We spent 100,000, which in the scheme of the big accountancy firms wasn't much, but still a lot, 100,000 to tell us the possibilities for wool, everything from insulation to fertilisers, and we've done nothing to tarnish that. So they're just three examples that come to mind very quickly.
Thanks, Deputy. Just in relation to making a submission, it's not too late. It's a non-statutory process, and if you wish to do so, certainly any Oireachtas member that wants to make a submission, even at this late stage, is very welcome to do so. I think that our industrial policy down the years has served us very well. Our economic success, full employment, high levels of prosperity and high living standards in a world of 200 countries. I think we've done well in that regard. It is largely based on trade, largely based on exports. And it isn't just about FDI. You know, people often don't know this, but there are pretty much as many people now working in Enterprise Ireland companies and Irish-owned exporting companies as there are in IDA companies. And the objective of the white paper is to give us a high-level roadmap as to where we go from here, consolidate the gains that we've made, but also what are the next wave of industries that we need to invest in. And I definitely think that a lot of those are going to be in the digital space, but also in the green space, in renewables, in the circular economy, and in new products, perhaps some of which you mentioned.
Deputy Connolly. Are we in time? Yeah. Thank you for the clarification that submissions are still possible. And indeed, I refer to the policy. And I want to thank the Minister that's here who will be dealing with the next questions on the progress that's been made. But the policy for the islands has been... We're waiting for it for so long with interdepartmental reports. Going back to seaweed, these are good news stories that we're absolutely ignoring. That's my point, and I'm only picking 2 or 3. The latest one was the wool one. You read a report, it tells you about the potential, and the government then does a Pontius Pilate and says it's up to the industry. Well, the industry hasn't done it, and the farmers who depend on sheep and tell you that they're not getting any price for their wool are begging for help, for leadership in relation to this, and of course they'll work with you, but it hasn't happened. So if the new policy is going to look at Indigenous industries in a real way, and if we're going to look at regional imbalance, and the Minister beside you knows very well that we've been downgraded in the Northwest region for the 2nd time from Europe, so there's something seriously wrong here, that we're not taken charge with a different vision of the possibilities that are there with the people on the ground, with co-ops as a serious part of that vision. Thanks.